So I just saw Shazam, and it was actually really fun. I am very much enjoying this less serious route that Warner Brothers and DC are deciding to take. And out of all of the DC films in this generation, this one's probably my favorite. This is a movie that doesn't try to be anything that it isn't. It's very cartoonish and sometimes cheesy, but this is a film that knows it is. This is one of the more genuine feeling superhero movies to come out in quite a while. It had a great tone and energy, and I was really enjoying myself for most of the film. The first 20 minutes of the film are not so great, and it gives off the impression that it takes itself a little too seriously, but everything after that point is loads of fun, and I could see myself even watching this again at some point. The overall tone of this film is reminiscent of the Raimi Spider-Man movies. If this film was released when I was younger, then I would likely have a similar sense of nostalgia for this as I do for those movies. Watching this movie kinda made me feel like I was a kid again in some ways. Kinda makes me feel like I'm that snobby old food critic at the end of Ratatouille. Now, this film is not perfect, but the negative aspects that appear in Shazam are ones that would bother me much more if they were in a more seriously toned film. The emotions that this film presents feel so much more earned than the average superhero movie. Very rarely did the film feel as though it was insisting emotions that I was unable to feel. The film's characters were overall likable and relatable, and the ones that weren't, although often cartoonish caricatures, didn't feel out of place in this movie. Characters like the stereotypical one-dimensional bullies feel just as appropriate in this movie as they did in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, whereas they would probably be a lot more annoying in a superhero movie that was insisting a more serious tone. Now, since I'm comparing to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man so much, I should mention that there's plenty that the original Spider-Man does much better. The cinematography, the action scenes, and the music were all much better compared to this film, and this film didn't present any of those aspects poorly, but none of them were really exceptional. The cinematography was competent and inoffensive, much more visually interesting than Spider-Man Homecoming at least. The action scenes were serviceable and didn't do anything too showy, but at the same time it might have felt as though it was trying to be way too cool if it did. The film's score was also very serviceable and inoffensive, although I have to admit there were a couple minor points in the film where it felt as though the scene would have worked better without it. There was a moment in the film where they resorted to those haha isn't this scene funny plucked string instruments, but it was over relatively quickly, so it didn't bother me that much. The acting in this film ranged from great to kinda bad. The best performances were from Zachary Levi and Jack Dylan Grazer, and it really helped the film that those two had quite a lot of screen time together. They had a really fun dynamic and played off of each other well. It was very enjoyable to watch. Some of the younger children were a little annoying, but I got used to them relatively quickly. Perhaps if they had more prominent roles, it would have been more of an issue. And once again, if this film was insisting a higher level of seriousness, then it probably wouldn't do it any favors. The younger version of Shazam did a pretty good job, but nothing amazing. And I guess my biggest issue with him would probably have to be with the casting. I don't know, it's kind of weird that this emotionally troubled foster child is essentially just a mini Zac Efron. Once again, didn't ruin the movie, but I guess it's just a preference thing. Something I love about this movie is that the story felt reasonable for the characters. I was worried that it would turn into some sort of overdramatic I'm just a kid and I have to save the whole universe sort of thing, but it was more about the people in this character's life more than anything else. And that also fits really well within this film's themes. The overall story of this movie feels like it's what it should be based on the concept. There are some aspects to the story that I feel could have been better presented. Some of the characters' motivations were a little iffy, and there are a few logical inconsistencies that didn't feel necessary. There are certain things that happen in this movie that'll make you go, yep, that's dumb, but there was nothing so glaring or important enough that it really ruined my experience. Overall, this was a very entertaining movie with plenty of satisfying scenes, and it's a huge step in the right direction for Warner Brothers and DC. Check this one out whenever you can and let me know what you think. And I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10.